name is Jackie Cox. Here on a casual Monday night here in Hell's Kitchen, which would, even on a Monday night, be normally filled with amazing nightlife, as so many of you in your various cities and towns would have some version of nightlife, even on a Monday. And of course, things are very quiet here in Hell's Kitchen. And when I found out about the Be an Arts Hero campaign, I instantly wanted to learn more and find out how we, as an artistic community, in nightlife and beyond, can support each other and also fight for ourselves and our community and collectively raise our voices to make some real change happen in this moment, or at least some sort of protection, some sort of insurances that the 5.1 million artists who are currently in this country who don't have really um, any sort of safeguards right now have to protect that community that contributes billions and billions of dollars to this economy. And so, when I was asked by the Be an Arts Hero campaign to host, I said yes and yes, God. And so I'm here with all of you guys today. I'm supporting my fellow nightlife artist, Keisha Carr, a fellow New York City queen, at that bearded queen, and I think we are all doing the best we can to support each other. But I'm so excited for all of us to really hone in on some actionable steps and things that we can do as a community to hopefully make some real change happen. And so with that, I'm going to kick it back to you, Brian, and we're going to get this thing going. As each speaker is talking, and especially while they're getting their thoughts out, please make sure you keep your mics on mute. And I believe there'll be times later when you will be able to unmute for questions, etc. But with that, I will give it over to Brian. Let's do this town hall.
Jackie, I'm gonna actually come back to you because I'm really interested. We've been asking all of our hosts sort of how they've pivoted. As of March 12th, a lot of things closed down, and then definitely by like March 16th, nightlife sort of closed. I've been seeing a lot of digital content from you. How have you pivoted to sort of keep creative and keep yourself out there?
Yeah, and I have to acknowledge in this moment my um, luck and privilege to have been on TV throughout the entire pandemic, which helped me find a whole new audience around the world, and I've been able to do a lot digitally, just due to all of that amazing amazing things that happened to me this year. But I think what's important for all of us to remember is that it's not everyone gets to have all of that propelling them into stardom. And for so many of us who especially are used to the live stage or the club stage or the bar, there's not amazing ways to translate that online. And I think I'm just so impressed seeing everything that I'm seeing from drag queens and entertainers all across the country and what they've been able to do, and doing the best I can to promote all of them in this moment. So, and it's especially in nightlife, especially, for those in the, I guess I'd say Broadway community, which Be an Arts Hero is also very actively involved in. There is usually some type of fourth wall, and for us in nightlife, there isn't. And so, on the one hand, it makes us being more immediate with our audience on digital platforms somewhat more relatable. On the other hand, it's really hard to crack a joke when there's no one to laugh. So I think we're all kind of learning what it's like to perform through a screen, what it's like to talk to people through a screen, or to talk to just comments through a screen.
Oh
And I
no.
think it's a learning process.
Fantastic. Well, we really appreciate you being here and representing a sector of the sector, a section of the arts and culture sector that the Being Arts Hero founders really wanted to make sure that we spent some time on. Yes, there's, Broadway and there's TV film, there's theaters across the country, but there's a very special niche where, that's why we had this town hall because of this special niche. And we wanted to try to make sure that everyone in the nightlife entertainment world knew that Be an Arts Hero was fighting for them as much as everyone else. Just really briefly, just to let you know how the heck I ended up here tonight. I am actually the business manager at John Christensen, New York, one of the major costume shops in New York City. I actually have some of my team here tonight. Thank you all for being here. And on March 12th, John is also my partner, my life partner. We're raising our 4 children, and on March 12th, he was supposed to go to the opening of Six, the musical on Broadway, and he instead went to the hospital. He's fine, but he was eventually diagnosed with COVID, and by the time Sunday rolled around, and of that week, our entire industry had shut down. We started a costume industry coalition in order to try to help the costume industry survive, because we're at a standstill, and obviously the orders for futures are basically, there's none. And as I was talking to all of our local politicians in New York City, talking to the mayor and mayor's office, and talking to state senators, and talking to the lieutenant governor, they all said they were waiting for a federal bailout. And so thankfully, we were introduced to Be an Arts Hero through the designer Tony Leslie James. And John and I did a couple of things that were kind of fun to get some of our celebrity friends to post a couple things, and we ended up on a Thursday night having a very late Zoom with them and learning about their mission and learning about what their goals were. And at that point, we realized while we're trying to save our industry in New York City, we needed to put some effort into the national conversation, and also recognize that this was a train we could certainly get on. It was a fast-moving train, but we got on. So I want to first introduce the founders so that they can all say hi. Brooke, I'm going to start with you.
We love Brooke.
I'm Brooke Ishibashi. I'm an actor singer based in LA, and I was in New York for about 11 years doing downtown experimental theater for pennies, and I'm very happy that you all are here. I'll pass it to Jenny.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny Grace Macomb, and I'm an actress, writer, producer, director, but I've also spent a lot of my life in nightlife. My survival job has always been bartending, so I used to host burlesque nights at little speakeasies that I used to work on, and I've worked all over nightlife. That's how I've made my bread and butter. So this community is very close to my heart because it is my community. I'm going to pass the mic to Carson.
Hi, my name is Carson Elrod, and I'm one of the co-organizers. I'm an actor, and ever since I moved to New York City in 1997, it has been the nightlife of New York City, whether it's the theater world that I'm part of, or Club Coming, or Here, or the Collective Unconscious. And one of the things that I just wanted to say, one of the things that got Be an Arts Hero going is, like, we watched something like the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater here, or Improv Olympic in Chicago, like these small little nightlife clubs that within 2 weeks of the curtain coming down had their curtain come down forever. And those kind of nightlife staples, those stars blowing out, was kind of an animating impulse of where this all came from. And so I just want to say that I feel like I'm in a room with people who I really resonate with and I really admire, and are part of the impetus of why we exist. So thank you for being here.
So Brooke, I want to pass it back to you to let everybody know sort of how Be an Arts Hero came about.
Yeah. As we said, we're artist advocates, organizers, but we're not politicians, we're not lobbyists. So it's crazy that we wound up here, because I think the pandemic hit and the institutional shutdowns just swept the nation, and we looked at each other and we're like, well, surely, someone's going to come in to save us. Surely the most powerful people in our industries are going to come to save us. And it was just crickets. Nobody was coming. So we realized that we had to advocate for ourselves, for the entire arts and culture sector. And we realized in that, that every little ecosystem under the arts and culture umbrella, everybody was advocating for themselves. And so in effect, our efforts were diluted because no one was mobilizing everyone together. And that's kind of I kind of marvel at that, right? What is that about the arts and culture sector? It speaks to how vast we are, how varied we are. But it also speaks to the fact that no one was advocating for the entire arts and culture sector. And so our efforts really were diluted in effect. So we thought that the best thing to do would be to mobilize everyone all together. And that means bringing together the boots on the ground, working class, blue collar arts workers, shoulder to shoulder with celebrities, shoulder to shoulder with the major institutional powers in the States, shoulder to shoulder with the small institutions in the States, alongside the unions, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we sought out to do. And that's how we wound up here. And now we got a lot of stuff in the works. So we're happy to bring y'all on board and talk about ways we can keep this train running.
I just want to let everybody know that Sonia is, she actually is an arts worker from California. She was furloughed, but she has been helping putting these together. She's going to watch the chat tonight. So if you do have questions as we go, please put them in the chat and we'll have a chance to be able to answer those by the time we leave. Let's start some stats. Let's show some people some fancy graphics here. Jenny, I'm going to pass that off to you while we show them fancy graphics.
Okay, so whoopsies, we're actually seeing not that, Brian.
What are we seeing?
We're seeing Zoom, I think. We're seeing the Zoom screen.
Are you serious?
Oh, I saw it. I
saw the graphic.
Weird, so it was just me? All right. Okay, try it again. There we go. Hi, okay. So our sector is one that contributes 877 billion with a B to the economy. So 877, I'm just going to repeat that, $877 billion to the economy. That's 4.5% of the GDP, and we represent approximately 5.1 million American jobs. Those are, some of them are union jobs, and some of them are 1099 jobs where there's no union representation. You know, I know nightlife seems to often fall through the cracks because there really isn't a nightlife union, or for burlesque or for drag. But this is our economy, and it's in a lot of trouble right now, right? So if you look at Americans for the Arts, they do this COVID relief, or they do this COVID impact statement where they survey arts institutions and arts workers, and arts workers report 62% of them are fully unemployed right now. That's 62% of 5.1 million Americans. That's a lot of people, right? And when we talk about venues, venues as a whole, arts and culture venues, we're looking at 12,000 organizations are saying that they will likely not be able to reopen after this crisis is over. And beyond that, when we look at music venues where a lot of nightlife works, 90% of them say they're not confident they're going to reopen. 90% of them say they're not confident they're going to reopen. So when we talk about the crisis that's happening right now, this is what we're talking about, right? Beyond that, when we talk about arts and culture, we are also talking about the fact that this is a sector where other sectors rely on us, right? Hospitality, tourism, restaurants, bars, all of those heavily rely on arts and culture. And we know this especially with nightlife, where especially hospitality with restaurants and bars are directly overlapped, right? So with that, 68% of tourism is cultural. That's a huge percentage of our tourism industry, right? So when we talk about our sector and how it's too big to fail, it's not just too big to fail for the 5.1 million American workers. It's too big to fail for all the reliant sectors that need us in order to survive, the bars and restaurants that rely on us so heavily. So this crisis is about to get a lot worse unless something is done. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic right back to Brian.
Jenny, I wanted you also to just talk a little bit about where the arts and culture, to put it in perspective, I think that, you know, a lot of people think that we're frivolous and we don't, you know, with that, it's just not a major part of the economy. And when we actually look at it compared to other comparable sectors, we're up there. We're up there. Can you explain this lovely graphic just a bit?
Sure. I mean, arts and culture contributes more to the GDP than education, than utilities, than transportation, than construction. We're, you know, we are one of the leading economic drivers of our country. So that's what that graph is. I mean, we add 5 times more to the GDP than agriculture. So when we're talking about airlines, for example, which we'll talk about a little bit more, 10 airlines got $50 billion in relief, right? But if you look at that graphic, you'll see that the arts and culture contribute $265 billion more than the whole of transportation combined. So the way that we're thinking about this is that the actual conversation is wrong about arts and culture, right? That there's something wrong with the way that people are thinking about us, because they're not thinking of us as a portion of the economy, right? There's this sort of mentality or this bias that we're frivolous, that we're money pits, or that we're either starving artists or rich millionaires living in our houses. You know, like it doesn't seem to be a clear understanding of what this work is. And the truth is that it's work, it's labor. We are a portion of the labor force of this country, which is one of the reasons why we like to use the term, instead of artists, which doesn't fully encapsulate everybody who works in our sector, we like to use the term arts worker, because that's more indicative of our contribution to our sector, right? Because there are more than just artists who make a show happen, right? There are stage managers, there are lighting technicians, there's set designers, there's costume designers, there's ushers, there's janitorial staff, there's administrative staff. There's so much that goes into making a show from start to finish, whether it's a burlesque show or a show on Broadway, whether it's a drag show or a ballet. There's so much that goes into it, and it's more than just what we would consider artists. So we like to use the term arts worker, and I think that's part of how we are trying to change the conversation around our sector.
I think too, the other thing that's important is that as a grassroots organization, you guys call yourself intersectional, and you have a great concern about the BIPOC community and how this economic downturn, which we're facing, is going to impact them. Brooke, I want to pivot to you to discuss sort of that domino effect if local economies start to fail because the arts and culture sector starts to fail.
Yeah, we focus on the human toll of this crisis, and I'm sure everyone on this call has been affected by it in some largely devastating way or another by this point. CNBC has reported that by October 1st, which is a little more than a month away at this point, if we don't receive federal relief, that 40 million Americans could be evicted. So that's within a month's time, folks. So our current homeless population in America is around 567,000, right? So within a month's time, if we don't get relief, and at this point they're on recess through Labor Day, so we're not going to get a bill in the next couple of weeks. Like, it's going to take a while. If we don't get relief, the homeless population in America could skyrocket 7,000%. And at that rate, 12 out of every 100 Americans could get evicted. So I think it's comparable to say at this point, all of us have been affected by COVID in some way, form, or fashion. You know, if we haven't gotten it ourselves, our friends, loved ones, colleagues, neighbors, someone we know has gotten it, right? Looking at those numbers, folks, like the homelessness crisis in America is going to be much the same. All of us will know someone who's been affected by it, if it's not us, if it's not ourselves. So I think for those of us who are privileged to have an apartment, I have family that I can rely on, I have somewhere to go. The crisis doesn't seem as urgent to me because, I'm okay in this moment, but we are pleading with people to look beyond our own bubbles, in that it's going to hit all of us. It's just a matter of how bad and when. It doesn't matter where you are on the ladder. It's even going to hit Tyler Perry. It's going to hit everybody. So we're urging everyone to do as much as you can now, and we're going to get to things that we can all do to help. And we got some really hopeful news that I think everyone will be heartened by as well.
Jenny, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to another portion of another facet of the homelessness crisis is one that right now 40% of homeless youth are LGBTQI+, right? And those are people who, children really, who have been kicked out of their homes. So they don't have family to go back to. So a lot of, when we talk about this eviction crisis that might spiral into a homelessness crisis, we know that there will be certain communities that are already marginalized and are already at risk that will be more at risk if they are evicted from their homes, because we know that, and beyond that, those who are already homeless and already marginalized, the resources that are being used to take care of those people are already stretched to the breaking point. And with an increase of 7,000 potential new homeless people, the resources to help those marginalized people are going to be depleted, so that, unfathomably depleted, right? So this is a crisis that continuously, one of the things I like to say is that this crisis takes pre-existing oppression and brings it to the breaking point. Pre-existing marginalized communities and brings them to a brink of desperation, right? So Brooke, I think you have something more to say.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention specifically the homelessness crisis is disproportionately going to impact Black and Hispanic communities. So with those two communities who are already disproportionately impacted by the crisis itself, by COVID itself, who are dying at higher numbers than everyone else, team that with the homelessness crisis, and it's a double whammy, and most people won't be able to survive that. So we think it's very important for everyone to understand that larger picture.
So I think that we can start sort of pivoting to celebrating some of the progress that you three have made, because you started at your kitchen tables. Like this was 8 weeks ago, and you all just took action. You decided that, we're just going to step up and make this happen. So you started knocking on the doors of a lot of people, but I want to focus about the senators that you focused on, really to hammer home this message that there needs to be legislation that needs to be passed in order for the arts and culture sector to survive. So Carson, I'm going to pass it off to you, and I'm going to show them this amazing chart. And this actually, I think you may have had a couple. There's S's over here that are senators that are scheduled, but you had a couple more this afternoon. So who are all these people, and what have you talked about?
Well, so when we started this, we knew that there was something wrong about the conversation between the government and the creative economy, because we started to watch, like, everything that Jenny and Brooke have just been talking about. Everybody on this call has seen that and felt that viscerally, because we've watched our friends move out of the city or get kicked out or become homeless or be in trouble, and so we started this in an effort to try to harness the celebrity and the institutional power and talk about a squeaky wheel. We realized if a squeaky wheel gets greased, like, what is a more dynamic, charismatic, sexy, compelling, amazing wheel than the American dynamic arts and culture community? So Be an Arts Hero was born with this idea of, the song that Jenny was playing at the beginning as everybody was coming in, by Mavis Staples, the song Action. It starts with this question: who's going to do it if I don't do it? So we started doing it, and everything that we did was about raising awareness so that the 100 senators whose jobs it is right now to stabilize the economy and get relief where it is needed actually do their jobs and do that. And so for the first few weeks of this, we were like, okay, who do we know? Who's the biggest celebrity that we know? Who can we get a hold of? Who can we reach out to? And we were so lucky that, our first ambassador was the great Billy Porter, who went on Seth Meyers and on Morning Joe and did print interviews, and then Jane Krakowski and B.D. Wong. And so after a couple of weeks of kind of raising the awareness and getting a little bit of institutional buy-in, senators started answering our calls. So for the last 3 weeks, Brooke, Jenny, Matthew Earlbach, who is not on this call, and I have been in 3 to 5 meetings a day with senators' offices. Today, we were in 3 meetings with 3 different senators' offices. And at the beginning, we were just 4 actor advocates going into these rooms saying, our community is effed. Like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? How is it possible that 10 airlines are able to get $50 billion in relief, and arts and culture adds $265 billion more to GDP every year? And we're getting, 60 million in the CARES Act, 100 million, a little bit more than 100 million in the HEROES Act. It's a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. And our community is, the floor underneath our community is crumbling. And so we were going into these meetings and we were saying, like, okay, FPUC has got to be extended immediately. COBRA subsidies, like, people cannot be losing their health insurance and becoming homeless in the middle of a deadly pandemic. Fortunately, in a lot of the rooms that we're going into, there's a complete alignment there. So on the Democratic side, with those first 2 things, there's never any pushback. On the Republican side, we're having that conversation about the $600 and about FPUC, and we are honored to be able to be in the room on your behalf and on our behalf. I was somebody who was paying my rent with FPUC. So to explain to our Republican representatives, hey, people in the arts and culture sector, we work our faces off. We don't do anything but hustle. So that $600 is not keeping us at home. It's keeping us housed and alive. We were the first to shut down. We're going to be the last to come back. We love our work and we love the hustle, but we got to stay safe and alive to do it. So we feel like those conversations are moving forward, and we're seeing, even in the Republican offices, there's a lot of movement coming forward on FPUC. But then the big cornerstone, and it really happened when we talked to Senator Kamala Harris's office, is Kamala Harris's office said, you really ought to craft a piece of legislation. And so we put our nose to the grindstone and we thought, what can we do that does the most for the most amount of people? And we thought, we are in the middle of a really bleak, dark night of the American arts and culture sector. And so what we have tried to do is bring to everyone the dawn, which is Defend Arts Workers Now Act. And this is what it is. And I want everybody to take a look at it and see what it does. And essentially what it does is it takes existing disbursement mechanisms. So you've got the NEA, the NEH, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Small Business Association. And what it does is, if you see in that second paragraph, in the third paragraph, basically the kind of too long didn't read version of this is, everybody just bring us your receipts from when this started. Everybody just get your receipts. Like, what did rent cost? What did the food cost? Like, let's get the money to the people. And that goes for something like Club Coming as well. The idea is, we want to get the money to where the fires are. And I can't wait for Brian to kind of explain to you how this is an elegant solution for the problem that the CIC is facing. And what we're trying to do is, there's a concept in legislation called intelligible principle. And so we know that with the NEA, the NEH, IMLS, that there are traditionally barriers like, oh, you need to have a matching grant, or you need to have a theater sponsor you, or, oh, the money has to go equally to all 50 states. So when we talk about this with senators, and as we're getting closer and closer to sponsorship, we're making it very, very clear that while these entities are the disbursement structure, their normal rules and regulations are not what we are interested in. We are interested in them as a fire hose that can spray, much needed water all over the fires that are raging across our economic sector right now. So the big thing that we're doing in these meetings with senators is, we are saying, Arts and culture is part of the economy. It's not being treated as if it's part of the economy. If we don't get the same relief as all the other sectors, we are a domino that will knock into tourism, into transportation, into hospitality. And so we need a floor put underneath our sector, just like transportation does, just like financial services does. And one of the things we're realizing is there is no secretary of arts and culture. There's a secretary of transportation, but arts and culture bring $265 billion more in GDP to the economy every year than transportation does. So there is something wrong in Washington, and Be an Arts Hero now exists. Our animating principle is to correct the conversation about what we are worth to this country. And so that's where we are. We're having these meetings. We had 3 today. We feel that we're very close to sponsorship. There is not one office that is not responsive to this. In fact, like, I have a very exciting story that I want to share with you. So when we were trying to get our meeting with Lisa Murkowski's office, who is the Republican from Alaska, the person who's in charge of her arts portfolio got back to us and said, arts and culture is not a big deal here in Alaska. We don't need to take the meeting. And we said, okay. And so we wrote back and we said, it's this many tens of thousands of Alaskan jobs. It's this many billions of dollars to the Alaskan economy. It's this portion of GSP. This is how it impacts tourism and transportation and airlines. And it wasn't the arts person who got back to us. It was Ann McInerney, Lisa Murkowski's head of economics and finance. And she got back to us and she said, I want to take the meeting. We got on the phone with her, and within 20 to 30 minutes, she said, this is clearly a nonpartisan issue. This is clearly just an economic issue. You are a huge part of the economy that needs to be stabilized, and you're being left out of the conversation. And you have to be part of the conversation. And so that was coming from a Republican senator's office. And it was John Cornyn who co-sponsored the Save Our Stages Act with Amy Klobuchar. So when we're going to these Republican strongholds in Georgia and Texas, we're explaining to them what a huge cornerstone of their economies that arts and culture is. And so we're optimistic. We have the Dawn Act. We're moving forward. We're close to sponsorship. And to get ourselves on the minds of all 100 senators, we have a huge Labor Day of action coming up that I know that Jenny wants to tell you more about.
Before we pivot to Jenny, because I do want to get there, Brooke, I wanted to respond to sort of what you put in the chat, because we've been talking to institutions and organizations, but this is a group of individuals. How is the Dawn Act going to actually help them individually? Like, how are they going to be able to access some of these funds in your mind?
Right. I think what Carson was speaking to in terms of intelligible principle, it's essentially, and I don't even understand all the wonky stuff because I'm an artist, but the way it was described to us is there's a way to put in verbiage where we can keep things open to interpretation in some ways. So in the way we look at it, we don't want to just protect our institutions. We want to make sure that all of our arts workers and laborers are protected as well. So through these dispersal entities that we've listed, we are making it a core intention to make sure that those funds, those grants, that they would be accessible to not just institutions, but also individuals. So, I'm going to leave it to the lawyers and, all of us who are working through all the language and the nitty gritty to figure out the logistics. But at the end of the day, the driving principle for this is to make sure individuals are have just as much fair access to this grant money as our institutions do. And that's a very integral principle for us. I think Jenny has something to say.
Yeah, Jenny, I'm going to pass it over to you because I know that you want to talk about the Day of Action, but did you want to add something to what Brooke was saying?
I just wanted to say that within that, one of the ways in which we're handling the Dawn Act is with the small businesses, the small business loans that are part of the language. This affects the venues that employ you, right? So a lot of the ways in which, like our motto, this is what our motto is. This is our mission statement, right? We aim to keep arts workers alive in their homes and with jobs to come back to. So a lot of what the Dawn Act is about making sure you have jobs to come back to, because once this crisis is over, if every single venue that you've ever performed in is closed, then that doesn't help you at all. And they are very much in danger. I mean, I don't know how many venues can really stay open under the kind of economic pressure that we have, especially with an indefinite reopening date, right? And a lot of these venues are ones that it can't really pivot appropriately to serving cocktails out of a window, right? You know, these are heavily reliant on entertainment. You know, I'm thinking of Marie's Crisis, I'm thinking of Duplex, I'm thinking of, those are New York based, you know, I'm thinking of House of Yes. You know, they're doing the best they can, but it's not a sustainable model, right? So if we're going to have our arts workers have jobs to come back to, we have to have loans, or rather grants, to these venues to make sure that they stay open, so that when it's safe to come back to work, you can come back to work. So within this, I think the thing that's going to help most arts workers is an extension of FPUC, and that is something that we're also fighting for, which is separate legislation. Most arts workers, especially 1099 arts workers, which a lot of nightlife arts workers are, the full extension of FPUC is the thing that's really going to keep you in house and home until this crisis is over. That's separate legislation, but it ties into the Dawn Act as well, because you know, it can't all be solved always in one bill, but this will make sure that you have jobs to come back to, and that is important. So when we're talking about our day of action, let's talk about it. So we're doing one on Labor Day, and that's not an accident. It's because we are a labor movement. We're about arts workers. We're about making sure that people, that we are acknowledged as a labor force, right? Just like any other labor force. So Labor Day is next Monday, so a week from today. But it also has another significance. Congress has unconscionably taken a vacation. Taken a vacation for almost a month in the middle of this pandemic, in the middle of this crisis, right? And not only have they taken a vacation, they've taken it past the 31st, past the 1st, right? So they're letting another rent or mortgage payment go by without finding any solutions. So within this, they come back in session on the 8th. So our day of action is the 7th. And the reasons why is so that we're going to try and make ourselves as big and as loud as possible. So we're going to blast our message on every single social media platform we possibly can, in addition to live demonstrations, so that the first thing in their minds when they come back in session is us, because we will have made the biggest splash we possibly could. So our day of action is called Arts Workers Unite. And we are very excited to have gotten the rights from the Larson estate and from Universal to use the song Will I from Rent. And if you all aren't familiar with that song, the lyrics are very simple. I can say them to you very quickly, which is, will I lose my dignity? Will someone care? Will I wake tomorrow from this nightmare? And that's the song. And we also think that it's beyond the relevance of those lyrics. There is an echo. History repeats itself, right? We are in the midst of another pandemic where another conservative, negligent government does not care whether huge swaths of our population live or die. And in an environment where we are facing a huge eviction crisis, we think it's especially pertinent to have to select a song from a musical called Rent. So within that, we are going to be hosting, or we are rather encouraging arts institutions to engage in live demonstrations. That's happening within our arts institutions, our arts and culture institutions, in which they will be safely socially distanced and masked, singing the song Will I. But within that, we are also encouraging arts workers in general to make this day of action the biggest that they can possibly have. I know that some arts workers are going a little rogue and maybe going on Instagram Live and singing the song themselves. We won't say no to that. We just ask that it not be monetized. There's no, we don't have the rights if there's any monetization of that. So no Venmos, no submissions for any kind of money of any kind. But within that, we have a graphics yard, and we have, you're going to be followed up with an email after this with a whole bunch of resources that you can use so that you can spread the graphics far and wide on social media, through Twitter, through Facebook, and through Instagram. And within that, we're also going to be hosting Instagram lives, and Jackie Cox was very, very kind to help us with our last day of action. Jackie and I called our senators together.
And they called back, and they called back too. And
Did they?
Yeah, and I think for those who are, you know, and I specified this in my Instagram post, so hopefully most of you are domestic. If not, I don't know how we can help you in this conversation. But for those here in the U.S., no matter what state you're in, call your senators. And even, you know, for those of us who are lucky enough to live in blue states, call your blue state senators, because, you know, I had a lovely phone call with someone from Kirsten Gillibrand's office. And, you know, I think a lot of our conversation was around, you know, even though we know that Kristen is behind us, or, you know, fighting for, you know, workers, the arts community, a big supporter of Broadway, it helps when they hear from their constituents, even in their blue states, to say, hey, just so you know, I had this many of my constituents calling up asking for me to fight for this. So now I'm taking this to the Senate floor with my constituents behind me. And that is power in numbers, right? I think we forget that, like, oh, what is my one call going to do? Your one call is going to be added to a tally of people who are asking for the same thing. And I think it's, sometimes there's that, even though calling seems so weird, if someone calls me, I'm like, what did I do? What's happening, right? We're all texting these days. But, you know, I think it's important, you know, for those in California, call up your senators in California. Call up Kamala Harris. She's got, I know she's busy, but someone from her office will add your name and number to a list of people asking for these same things. And I think that that's something we can continue to do as we grow and evolve into what we're asking for, is to keep telling those senators in red and blue states what we're asking for.
I want to just say that Jackie is absolutely right. And we have been told by multiple senators' offices that the most important way that you can get your voice heard is by calling your senator and telling them that this matters to you. And especially on the day of action, because again, this is all about having the last message that they hear before they go back into session be about the arts and culture sector. So you can call your senator anytime, but make sure to call them on Labor Day, all right? Like, of all the days, make sure it's Labor Day. You can call every other day, but make sure Labor Day is the day that you also call, okay? So, like, call, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, also Labor Day. Call them Labor Day, okay?
And Jenny, in addition to all of the amazing graphics and resources for the Day of Action, there's also scripts. We're all, you know, performers, and scripts are helpful. So definitely take advantage, add your own little twist, add your own little spice to it. But definitely there's scripts that will help you in these conversations, you know. And it is most often a voicemail, right? So leave that voicemail, and then oftentimes someone will call you back. And I think that's a chance for you to just make your point heard again. If you're in a red state, to just really strongly say that those are your opinions, and this is what you want on the record as a constituent of your state. If you're in a blue state, you know, encourage that blue senator to keep fighting for us. And some are fighting more than others, so just keep that. You know, I sometimes think a little passive aggressive positive reinforcement can help, but just keep, if I think, as annoying as it sometimes will seem, it will help just that fire starts to build, right? And then change starts to happen.
And beyond that, yes, there are scripts. So in case you're phone shy, I know I get nervous. I get a little social anxiety. So we have scripts that you can, that are available on our website and in the bio of our Instagram, that you can absolutely go to. But we also have a database of all of your senators' phone numbers, all of your senators' emails, their social media handles on every single platform, in addition to how many followers they have, just in case you were curious and wanted to be a little creepy about it. Be like, oh, I'm more popular than Senator so-and-so, huh? So beyond that, there are other ways that you can get involved. We have an Action Network letter so that you can email your senator. We make it easy. We know that there's a lot of causes that matter a lot to a lot of people right now. There's a lot of trauma and a lot of pain happening in the world. And we know you might not always have a lot of time to devote to writing a letter or making a phone call. So we make it super easy. So we wrote this letter for you. And with Action Network, it actually emails it to your senator. So it reads as an actual email, right? And we've been told that that is the most effective way to email your senator. You can also use your own words, and we absolutely encourage you to do so if you have the time and bandwidth. But we're also trying to make it easier for you if you don't have the bandwidth, if you're struggling for any reason during these traumatizing times, and you just, I know sometimes it's been hard for some of us to even get dressed, things are hard. So within that, we try to make it as easy as possible for you to advocate for yourselves and advocate for our sector and be heroes. So those are the methods that we also have a letter to the to the United States Congress that you can sign. All of this is on our website on beanartshero.com. And if you go to the Get Involved button, there's one for individuals, and it gives you a list of all these amazing things you can do so that your voice can be heard.
Brooke, I just want to make sure we got through the 5. I think we covered your 5, correct?
Yeah,
in terms of
tweeting tweets, posting our graphics, signing the Action Network letter, signing our open letter to the 116th Congress, calling your goddamn senators. Those are the top 5 that people can do. And if you just go on beanartshero.com, it is all there. The scripts are there. The contact info is there. All of the graphics to share are there. We make it so freaking easy, y'all. So it can take as little as 1 minute or an hour or however much time you want to put into this. So we're going to give it to y'all and go with Goddess.
I just wanted to point out that in the graphics yard, they have state-by-state graphics that you can post depending upon which state you live in or where your family may live as well. I found it just sort of comprehensive. This is what it looks like. Like you could go to any state and it is all there. And there's plenty of graphics for you to put up on your Instagram, on your Twitter, on your Facebook. It really is, the whole package is there, ready and for you to help spread the word. Also, speaking of spreading the word, I know that we've been working on these town halls, and in terms of gaining momentum, it's all about a couple of people. What I call this the founder's sermon, and once people come to the founder's sermon, they join the church. And I know that once we get through the next week in terms of the day of action, we'll probably be doing these every week. And so if you do notice there's another one hosted by who knows who, it's going to be a musician or Misty Copeland or whoever it's going to be from the arts and culture sector, please encourage your colleagues to join in, to join the conversation, because I think it's really important that we continue the conversation to raise awareness across the country. Brooke.
Yeah, I do want to say it because I think oftentimes sometimes we don't realize how powerful our own individual voices are, right? But a really interesting example is we went into Senator Ed Markey's office, and he's co-sponsor of Green New Deal with AOC. He's like one of the biggest thinkers, so liberal, so progressive. And we went into their office and we gave them the pitch, and they were like, we didn't even know that that the sector was in such trouble. Nobody is coming to us to tell us that your arts and culture sector is drowning. Where is everybody? You're the first ones to tell us this. So it is incredibly beneficial for every one of y'all and all your loved ones and communities and colleagues to please just make some loud ass noise, because if we don't make that noise, they're not gonna know what we need. So I think everyone has so much power individually to raise your voice, and we just encourage you please to use it and get real rowdy.
We're trying to be cognizant of everybody's time, so we have about 5 more minutes. Are there any questions that anyone has? You can unmute yourself. You don't have to put them in the chat. But this was a lot of information. Is there anyone who has a question that they would like to pose to the heroes? Opera Gaga, I see your hand up.
I would like to make a comment. First of all, I was able, thankfully, to talk to someone from Washington Post yesterday, because I feel like media and journalism is really powerful. So I talked to him yesterday. We had a great conversation. They sent a photographer to my home today. So I'm hoping to get the story out. But I'm just wondering, like, I mean, I get it. It's great to call our senators and email and all this shit. But like, I mean, I'm pissed off. Like, why aren't we in the streets, like, screaming? I mean, I don't know about you all, but I work at Company XIV, House of Yes, Duane Park, New York, Barshland Follies, McKittrick Hotel. I mean, I am on the ground, you know, driving the arts community in New York. Like, I didn't just have a contract. Like, I do this every night. And I just don't understand why there isn't a furious, angry protest happening to protect us. I mean, I think it's really great that we are trying to say, here's who we need to contact, but like, what else?
Carson, do you want to answer the what else question? Because I know there is sort of a plan beyond next Monday.
I mean, opera, I'm with you. I mean, I've kind of asked myself that question every day since January of 2017. And, you know, and we are in a world in which there is sustained street protests and activity, because as Jenny noted, we are in the midst of concurrent cataclysmic crises in this country. And it is incredibly hard to be a signal that cuts through the noise of what is happening right now. And it is hard. And I absolutely sympathize with what you're saying. And we basically are doing our own version of that on Monday. I mean, we are organizing with arts institutions across the country and here in New York, street activity that will create optical what the way that we're looking at it is, it's funny that you brought up Washington Post, because when we have our meetings, we say, okay, how do we create our Washington Post picture? Because we want to create something that can hit these.
In my house today, so I am putting us out there. Let me tell you.
I love it. No, I really appreciate it. I just want you to know that, like, we're in complete and total sympathy with you, and we are trying we're trying to turn up the heat. And what we're doing is gaining momentum. I would say that we're still in the early phases of this. I think it's actually possible. I think it's actually possible that we might be able to get Dawn onto the floor next week. Like, that is, we're taking 3 meetings with senators every day. That's our goal. Our goal is to get Dawn out onto the floor next week. And if we're able to put a floor underneath our sector, that's just the beginning. This movement needs to grow. This needs to go from a whisper to a scream, because right now there is no one in DC that is an advocate for this community. And what we're realizing is that the premier arts organizations that are out there are 501c3s that are legally prevented from advocating for legislation and political activity. And so there is a hole in American arts advocacy, and we are here to fill it. But we are at the very beginning. We're 9 weeks in, but we have got to go from a whisper to a scream, and it means that every single one of us that has a platform has to use it. Anybody, any one of us that has a famous friend has to, like, nudge them and say something. And we are growing this. And as Jenny said at the beginning, you know, this is You know, this is concessions workers. This is bartenders. These are people that, you know, park cars. This is stand-up comedians. This is ballet dancers. This is actors. The 5.1 million of us need to sing a song together and sing it in the same direction at the United States Senate, where they can't not hear it. And so they do what's right, which is put a floor underneath this sector before they suffer the consequences of a total economic collapse because they refuse to put a floor under 4.5% of the economy.
Agreed. And under Peter Marks, who's writing this article for the Huffington Post, or Washington Post, who I hope I get to be very much a part of, you know, this is just ludicrous. Like, Company XIV, you know, we have a theater in Bushwick. We are a neighborhood theater. We're the only people in the space. We drive up the value of all the properties around us. We drive up the business to all the restaurants around us. I mean, this is insane and absurd to not, you either need to offer us some kind of support until we can open, or let us open under CDC guidelines and give us a chance to survive. And that's my whole point that I made to Peter Marks with the Washington Post, which it will come out later this week, and I will tag you all when it comes out. And I hope that they use whatever I said. But I mean, this is insanity. It's not right. And, you know, I went to work every day at Company XIV for the past 5 years, just like anyone else working at an office. I had benefits. I paid taxes. My boss paid taxes on fire laws, liquor licenses, unemployment. The fact that Company XIV was not approved for any kind of PPP loan. We have no support. How is this okay? You know, we added so much to the community and so much to the economy. I just don't think it's right. And I'm just here to do whatever I can do to join you. But I have never felt so, as a professional working artist, I've never felt so not valued and so disrespected as a person. You know, I have as much education and training as any doctor, lawyer, or teacher. I have a master's and bachelor's in fucking opera. I trained for 10 years as an acrobat. Would you tell a teacher, a doctor, or a lawyer to just pivot? This is insane.
Yeah, and I think to add to what Ms. Opera Gaga is saying, I would love to know from the Be an Arts Hero folks in this chat too. Is part of the goal of this campaign to also encourage our state governments to actively work on potential reopening plans and to advocate for, you know, as every other industry is, you know, lobbying for, you know, gyms are lobbying, how can we reopen safely? And, you know, in New York especially, where we're told that nothing except for incidental music can be played at any venue. Is there any part of the advocacy that's going to really focus on how and when it is safe to open, how to safely do so, like we are doing in schools, you know? And I think that I would love to know from you guys if that's part of something either coming down the pike or something you're thinking about.
Jenny. Jenny.
Do you want to tackle this? I think it's a complicated issue, right? We're not doctors either, but we know that people are still dying every single day, and we know that children are going into school and the schools are immediately closing because a whole bunch of those children are then getting infected and infecting their families. So I'm not super interested in doing anything that's going to put a single one of you in danger of losing your lives or having any of your family or friends lose their lives. I'm more interested in keeping you solvent until it's actually safe, but that's me. Beyond that, like, is there safe ways to do certain things? Absolutely. We haven't explored that, and I would be interested in hearing from you on how that would work. I don't have all the answers, and this is part of the reason why we hold these town halls, is to get information from sectors we don't hear from, because we only know what we know, right?
Yeah, and I think something that we've noticed here, you know, and I think this is the same is happening in California, is that priorities are given to industries that are splashier, right? Film and TV can restart production, and they've written out lovely guidelines for all of them. And I don't know what those guidelines are for live performance. I don't know what those standards are, and maybe nothing exists. But I think it's right that so many of the rules that are put out seem so arbitrary, right? What's the difference between a live performer that's playing a guitar on a stage versus a drag queen? You know, that in theory, those two things should both be able to exist on a stage, provided the audience is socially distanced and outdoors, right? If those are the rules we're playing by. So I would love, you know, as we, you know, start talking about the live performance element, and I do think, and I don't mean to silo us out from the rest of the arts workers, is that, you know, it's the live piece that's going to continue to suffer the longest.
Yeah.
And especially Nightlife, by its nature and design, is live entertainment that happens in crowded spaces, which are the exact worst conditions for COVID. And I think that in addition to money, I think it will help just even to articulate what those struggles are for that specific part of this group. You know, as there's no real way for these types of venues to reopen the way they were, and also no roadmap that seems to be written by anyone who actually understands what nightlife or really live performance is.
I also think we need to hold up, and evaluate essential business, right? So church, right? That's essential. Well, listen, church has costumes, they have a script, they have lighting designers, they have sound designers, and church is able to function because they're an essential fucking business. Sorry, pardon my French, I don't mean to go there. But like, I mean, church is sanctioned to go on because it's essential, and they're doing all the same things as theater. Now, explain to me how all of those people are deemed okay to survive, and not someone like me who works in a theater with people, like with an audience of 100. Mind you, our capacity where I usually work is 300, and we seat less because we're in cabaret seating. I'm just, help me out here. How is it okay that church is fine and we are not fine? I don't get it.
It's because of the lobby. I mean, it comes down to essentially the people who can lobby. And ultimately what Being Arts Hero is trying to do is consolidate all of the lobbying efforts, because you have Actors Equity who's going to ask for their $4 billion for their actors, just the actors. Well, you're an opera singer. Are you covered under that? You know, are you an equity member? Well, no. So then you go over to the stagehands. They're going for their $2, you know, over here. So it's a matter of, I'm not sure if everybody noticed, and I didn't really point it out, it's a $43.7 billion with the B, that's the ask, showing a 5% of what actually the value added to the entire economy is for the arts and culture sector. So I think that opera, what the ultimate thing is, we have to collectively get loud in order for us to make these kind of cases. Like, well, the churches over here are basically holding theater, that's all it is. How come we can't? Jackie, I think, honestly, from the costume shop industry, I know that Equity wasn't even thinking about fittings. They weren't even thinking about protocols. And so when we contacted them and we said, hey, we should have a chat, they were like, well, why? And we're like, your actor comes to our shop, gets completely naked, and there are 2 to 10 people who will surround them to fit them on a costume. We should probably have a chat. I think everyone is scrambling to try to figure out, like, what are the protocols supposed to be? And what we're being handed actually from TV and film are just recommendations. Like, no one can actually mandate that these are the actual protocols. So I do know that there is a restaurant, there's the restaurant, I forget, there's a coalition of restaurants. They're going about, you know, their business to get the restaurants, and by extension, it's the bars, and by extension, it's the small venues. I also know in New York, there's the Theater Alliance, the Independent Theater League, I think it is. They're doing the same. And opera, I don't know if your theater is a part of that, but it's all of us trying to create coalitions down here when ultimately it's a problem that somebody else caused. And what Being Arts Hero is trying to do is give us at least a life vest. Like, that's all it is right now, is like a life vest, so we can continue floating about as all of the things are sort of worked out from technicals. Brooke, I know you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Well, what I would love, because I know that we are running short on time. If everyone has our email address, if we can drop that into the chat, I would love to hear your feedback on the Dawn Act. I would love to hear your feedback on, opera, you were talking about reopening, and Jackie, you were talking about reopening plans, how we would do that for your specific line of work, because we don't work the jobs, right? Like we need to know what you folks need so we can bring it into the room. So while we're having these conversations with senators, they can know exactly what, House of Yes, what everybody specifically needs, because you're our lifeline. Like you're the ones who can give us that information. So it would be incredible if y'all could email us and just give us all the information, because that's the only way we're going to best represent the needs of our arts workers and how to keep everybody above water, floating.
I will say a point again, and joining this group, when I first was looking at sort of what their asks were, there was no mechanism in place for small businesses to get any of the $43 billion. And I said to Be an Arts Hero, the founders, I call them the trio now. I said to the trio, well, how does this impact me? I'm a small business owner, and I'm not for profit. I'm actually for profit. So how am I going to get the money? And that's when they decided that the SBA could be giving us grants, essentially, for small businesses that are arts focused. So if you think of all of the businesses that are in the business and support the arts, even down to, the marketing people and the casting people and, the press reps and all that, they're all small businesses and they all need help because they're all vacating their offices right now in order to survive. And ultimately, I don't want to be competing with Shake Shack for an SBA grant. I want to be competing with other arts organizations that understand what I'm going through, and we should all be on the same level. I see everyone just snapping and loving it, but that's where we're at. I want to make sure, Jenny, I think Jenny and Carson, you have final thoughts, and then I do want to make sure that we wrap it up. Jenny?
First of all, I just want to say for the record, Opera Gaga, I think you're out of
Opera Gaga left.
She left. But I just want to say I love your fire, and we have all had moments, many, many, many moments every day where we scream into the void and are furious with the way that things are. You caught us at 10:13, and we've been going for, we work around, I work around, I'll just speak for myself.
I had to get a drink. Sorry about it.
No, you're fine. Me too. I mean, we do 12 to 19 hours a day working for y'all. That's all we're doing. And we only know what you need if you tell us. So this is the reason why we have these town halls, so that we can know what you need, so we can go out and advocate for you. If you caught us a little bit earlier, we probably would have joined you in just being way more fired up. At this point, I'm like, oh my God, I've sent over 840 emails today. I'm so tired. But at the end of the day, we're doing this for you. And if it doesn't help you, then we need to know that, so that we can go out and advocate for you. And especially, I just want to say, Opera Gaga, I used to work for the McKittrick. Like, I know that very well. And some of my best friends work for Dwayne Park. Maine Anders is the main attraction, is one of my dearest. Yeah. So I know what you're going through, girl. I do. I absolutely do. And Peter Marks is a good friend to our organization. He's interviewed us twice last week. So we're looking forward to a really good article coming up. I think the Washington Post is really going to come through for us.
Yeah, he's writing. We had a good conversation yesterday, a really long conversation, and they sent a photographer to my home today. I don't know what they will include or not, but I just feel like he's on our side, and I just pray that our story gets out there, because it's so important, and I feel desperate. I don't feel like it's right for me to leave New York. I mean, you're going to have to drag me out of here kicking and screaming. Like, I built my career here. I have my business here. I don't think it's right that we should have to give everything we worked for up for this 8-month screw up. So I hope that he covers us and tells the story.
Carson, did you have a final thought?
I mean, I just love everything that you've said, Opera. So thank you for every little bit of it. I dropped it into the chat. I live over here on DeKalb, so I'm right around the corner from XIV. I love seeing the shows there. You guys are all amazing.
Thank
You
you.
you can often find me right next door at KCBC.
Ah,
It, but so I guess I would end. I want to amplify something that Opera said that we talk about, which is this idea that we should do something else, or that we should abandon New York, or just like pack our bags. Like, the thing that we're trying to say to these senators, like part of the message that we're trying to say is, with $877 billion in value added to the economy, that's more than tourism, that's more than transportation, that's more than mining or construction. You don't want us to do anything else with our lives. You don't want us to. We are too valuable. We're too valuable to the country. We're too valuable to our communities. Richard Florida wrote a book called The Rise of the Creative Class in the Early Aughts, and he said, if you want to know where a community is going to flourish, look for where gay people are and where artists are. And that has been a reliable metric over and over again. And municipalities across the country have said, okay, how do we court these constituencies? Because when these constituencies come to our town grows, becomes more robust, becomes more happy, becomes more economically vibrant and flourishing. So this idea of what Opera was saying is like, you don't want us to leave New York or Omaha or wherever we're creating art. You need us to stay being arts workers. You need us to be able to do what we do. The country needs us, both in their hearts, but more importantly, in their wallets, because we are a huge economic engine. So we're here to change the conversation. We're not some frilly, weird thing in the corner. We are right up front and center of the American economy. And we don't have anybody telling our legislative bodies this. And so now we exist, and now we are. So that's all we can do for now. And like definitely take a look at Dawn and think about how it helps you and how it doesn't, and write us and tell us how it could be better. And we are going to be a living, breathing, adapting organization that is about putting a floor underneath this essential economy, which is our economy.
Jackie, Brooke, what's up? Yeah.
Say one last thing, akin to what Carson's saying, I want to acknowledge out loud, like, people in this room, like this community, you are our lifeblood. None of this would exist without all of you. And so I just want you all to know that we see your value, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure everybody's sustained and vibrant and can come back strong, because we need you. So just want to acknowledge that.
Jackie, I want to turn it back to you for one final thought before we go.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for hosting this, and thanks so much for listening to, I think Opera Gaga really hits the nail on the head of, like, I think what it is in nightlife in a big city that's driven by nightlife, like New York City. So thank you guys so much for even taking the time to listen to our community, which has its own unique sets of concerns that still tie into the greater arts community, but are, I would say there's a lot of nightlife workers that aren't even 1099 employees, that have no proof of their prior employment or no proof of their prior anything. I think most drag queens I know, get paid less than the poverty line on their taxes, and B, it's cash that comes and goes. And I think that's always important for you guys as you guys continue on and working with the legislators to remember our struggles. And like I said at the beginning of this call, I'm lucky that I very recently was pulled out of that life, but I've lived that life. I lived that life of, here's $500 of cash, and you have no way to prove that existed when it's gone. So I think for our specific part of this sector, I think remember just how scrappy we are. And you know, I appreciate all of you guys for taking the time to listen to our community, and for everyone who's here from the community to listen in. And I think, like everyone was saying, you know, email back Be an Arts Hero, read through what they're proposing, and share your thoughts, because I know that they've taken a lot of time to listen to me and my concerns as I've been working with them over the past month, and I know they'll listen to you guys too. So never be shy, and I think Opera Gaga, you're an inspiration.
I also want to say that as we close that, you know, as we were watching the numbers for attendance tonight, I was noticing that there were almost 400 people that checked it out. There were almost 400 people from Nightlife who looked at it and went, oh, no. And I really want for those of you who came to church tonight to spread the word and to really, you know, let everyone know in your own circles that the next time there is one of these, go. Then the next time that, you know, there's a request to tweet or post or whatever, just spread the word and really try to engage everyone. We can't do it all. These three people who have been, you know, trying as much as they can to create coalitions, we need every single person to get on every platform and connect with every single person personally, because you can't just post something on Facebook and hope people show up. You really have to reach out personally and say, hey, I've learned about this organization and I really think that you should follow them and really, you know, get active with them, because there is so much strength in numbers. So I want to thank everyone for coming on behalf of the founders of the trio. And we know it's rough out there, but we know that as we continue this fight, that we will find a dawn at the end of the night, and hopefully that will be coming through very soon to help us all. So we're gonna watch you all click off as we say goodbye, because we always do a postmortem after. So goodbye, everyone. Click, click, goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Bye, babies.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. It's not hard to join in. It's not hard to participate.
Love you, Opera Gaga.
I love you guys. I pray for better days to come so soon.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.